Hi there, I'm Don.
And hi, I'm Cindy. Welcome to Pearls of Liberty for April 26th, 2014. Don noticed that, that Jeb Bush is being really hyped right at this moment.
Well, I wouldn't say really hyped. I would say they're putting him out there. Um, Hillary has been out there as a potential candidate, getting slammed by the quote right, um, and now the establishment is trotting out the favorite of the right establishment, neocons, Jeb Bush, as the top presidential contender. And I really think that the system is just gearing up to do the old left-right switcheroo again, and make people feel victorious that Hillary doesn't get in there. Now, it may very well be that the left is strong enough in terms of their not real support, but their control of the political machine. That and this is a real rivalry between these two camps, but they both work. They're both the left and the right arms of the same beast. So the left has control now. The right under Jeb Bush wants to get it back, and because they both sides want power. And he is just as bad a news as she is, and some would say worse. I'm not going to even get into that debate, but the America really needs to know about the Bush family and how very, very tied in they are to the New World Order. And people don't realize, but they should, how the George Herbert Walker Bush's father, Prescott Bush, was instrumental in attempting a coup against Franklin Delano Roosevelt, to the point where the head of the United States Marine Corps, Colonel Smedley Butler, was asked to spearhead a coup to get FDR out of office. And this was not some small things. This was a huge conspiracy that's been covered up because, to quote FDR and other people, the American people would just be too devastated that this happened in their country. But this needs to be known. So the level of duplicity and deception that is the core of the Bush family needs to be exposed every bit as much as the Clintons' tyranny needs to be exposed.
So, what can we hope for in 2016?
Well, I am not a 100% Rand Paul guy, but I would like to think that he has a lot of influence from his father. Some people debate that and say he's just another neocon. I think that he's probably the closest, if he is, he's much more libertarian leaning than most neocons. So I would really like to see a Rand Paul presidency, but I am under no illusions that that would be a panacea for what's wrong in America. It would certainly be a good start. What we really need more than anything is a full airing of true history and real political activities that the mainstream media is not giving us. One of the great things that would be beautiful if it happened would be for the Committee on Presidential Debates to be exposed as being a front for both the Republicans and the Democrats, because they purposely find ways to exclude any other candidates other than those two parties in the name of, oh, well, these are the only real serious candidates. No, we need a broader perspective in America. So debates between third-party candidates, fourth, fifth, many parties need to be. So there's a wide exchange of views that needs to happen.
Well, to some extent, it seems to me as if some of, even talking about this is almost pointless, because election fraud is so rampant. And just the other day, I saw an article about 44,000 voters that are registered in both Virginia and Maryland.
Wow.
And so there's, and one thing that I appreciate about the TV series Scandal is how clearly that shows how easily election fraud can be accomplished.
Well, yes and no. They can only do it to a certain extent, as long as there really are honest public opinion polls. And there are enough good pollsters, accurate pollsters, that they can't buy off every one of them. Last I looked into it, Zogby was really pretty good in terms of not being bought off by the establishment. And the other major pollers pretty much have to go with the data, or they lose their credibility, because they don't just do political polling. They do polling for businesses and all kinds of things. And so they have to have a track record of accuracy to be able to survive. And as long as the polls are fairly close, then yeah, voting machines, election rigging, all kinds of voter fraud can be used to sway the outcome one way or the other. But if the polls are not close between the candidates, then there really can't be the fraud. So what needs to happen is American people need to wake up and realize that we don't want tyranny. We really don't want to be sold this lesser of two evils garbage anymore. And so really it all comes down to education and people becoming awake and aware of what's really going on.
Well, we are going to shift gears here and ascend a couple of levels above the American presidency to King of the World.
This is really bombshell stuff. What we have is the head of the Illuminati coming out into the open, and this is somebody that is being introduced to the world, or at least to the segment of the world that Fritz Springmeier is in touch with, by a man, Fritz, who has written books exposing the Illuminati. The Bloodlines of the Illuminati by Fritz Springmeier, which you can purchase online right here with this link. Or Fritz is, I don't think it's too unfair to say he's promoting them. He's telling him that this is a guy who has had an awakening experience. He says he's not a Christian, but he's kind of like a Nebuchadnezzar that wants to be a good king. So, and that Christians don't necessarily need to oppose somebody that's a good ruler just because they're a part of a group that's done bad things in the past. So there's a very vigorous debate on Fritz's Facebook post, and people are making some good points, but as soon as people get just into name-calling and anger, then Fritz will delete their posts. And I agree with Fritz's approach, but I think that there's some core things that I personally want to see before I would be convinced that somebody is a benevolent ruler. And of course, the eugenics is not good, and this guy, Van Dun, is in league with eugenicists. So I have a difficult time saying that this is a benevolent ruler.
After we recorded our video for the week, Don found another article, and something else presented itself that we wanted to take a look at. So these are add-ons, but this seems very important.
Yeah, this is the follow-through on Kevin Annette's stuff that the Common Law Court of International Justice and the lawsuit against the foundations of our modern corporate society, which is tied in with the Vatican and lays the foundation for a lot of corporations, and really this really is the equivalent of the Reformation, in which Luther nailed his 95 Theses on the Wittenberg church door, Kevin Annett has a proclamation. I can't pronounce the name of it, Moshnet or something like that. And this is we really are laying a whole new foundation of common law in society today. Basically, what Kevin is saying, and it's really profound, is that if you do not have a spiritual man um, as your foundation of your system of justice, a man who is able to discern right from wrong and has the conscience of the Creator as his guide. If you don't have that at the core, then you don't have a valid legal system. And this is what has happened. The Church of Rome, the Vatican, has been exposed as being in violation of the very foundation it claims to be standing on. And we really will, from this point, be beginning to build a whole new world on the ashes of the old.
This is pretty remarkable stuff. Many of the things that we've been praying for and hoping for and watching for some time seem to at least be on the horizon.
And I want to be quick to add that this is not a flash in the pan thing. You know, some guy just decided that he was going to sue the Vatican, and he claims that he won. No, this is the culmination of 30 years worth of work, tireless, fearless, persistent work, using the best and most appropriate legal means at his disposal to follow through on the crimes that he personally became aware of, mainly starting, I believe, with the genocide against the Native Americans in Canada. And it led back to the royal family and to the Vatican, and he's just been pursuing this trail for a long time, and this is the fruit of a lot of work, and we will all, as humanity, benefit as the planet gets put back on its foundations. Now, you know, Kevin Annett isn't the only person doing this thing. There's other amazing things happening. We really are in the time of a shift, and this is just one major part of that shift.
Another part of the shift is something that we had already recorded that was that we had included earlier, and this is the more recent chapter on the same story of Fritz Springmeier introducing the Illuminati. And Fritz very clearly states
Wait a minute, didn't he introduce the Illuminati when he wrote this book? What do you mean, introduce the Illuminati? He introduced him a long time ago. He wrote Bloodlines of the Illuminati. What are you talking about?
Well, in this introduction, they are more present, more actively present, because, as Fritz said...
You mean they're cooperating with his actual wanting to learn about them?
That's precisely what Fritz has written in
He's actually said that they've chosen him as the one to sort of reveal themselves to the world openly. And they've kicked out the Satanists, right?
Well, that's what they say. This in line. Here's Fritz in line with their
Trust
own.
but verify, yeah.
Exactly. In line with their own discussions to be more open, they have decided to make me, that's Fritz, their choice of persons to do that.
Okay, then. This is pretty incredible stuff.
It is incredible stuff, and there's, as you said, trust but verify. Yeah, certainly called for, since the deception a cloak of deception has been around them for quite some time. Now they're saying that they want to come out in the open, but to what degree, it's difficult to determine.
Yeah, and it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to agree with them or even, think that they're people that are good. It just, now a dialogue can begin because the world can't be in denial, and they can't and don't want to hide anymore. So this is very real power want to interact with the people that they say that they rule, and I won't say that they don't. It's just that they don't fully have my consent for a lot of the things that they're doing. Um, so they're doing a lot. They have been doing a lot of things without the consent of the people, and now they at least want to have some interaction with the people. I'd say that's a step in the right direction.
Yeah, they're acknowledging that we also are here on Earth and have significance. Oh, look, there's other people here.
You're on the same planet as I am. Let's talk about this planet.
That's right. So here concludes our add-on, and hope that you are enjoying our discussion today. There's a concern about how money would be handled.
Yeah, and that's a very important concern. Yeah, and because really, in terms of the Babylonian world system, that Christ does tell us to come out of her, my people. I see the monetary system as being the crux of how everything is all held together, and the usury-based money system that needs to it needs to be possible for Christians to utilize alternative currencies without being without them being made illegal or taxed by the system, etc. There needs to be a way to come out of the system, and I don't mean just joining the Amish or something like that, which is really something that is not workable for most people. There needs to be a practical way to come out. And here is a video, a page about the usury-free Jubilee idea, which really, I'm hoping gets a lot of traction, because the main guy behind this, and Anthony Migchels in Holland, and also Wayne Walton in the United States, they fully understand that the Bible commands Christians to not be not to lend money at interest, which is usury. And some people would say, no, that's just excessive interest. No, there have been, let's go to that book. There's been a book that's been written recently by this French academic guy, and he exhaustively studied the monetary systems of the world and whether money is trickling up or down, and he is saying that because of usury, because of interest, far more money trickles up than trickles down. And it's actually pretty simple to prove. The gross national product of any country is much lower than the interest rate on the money that is being lent to that country, for any country. And why people are blind to this is just amazing, that people don't ask themselves, well, if my country is borrowing money, who is it borrowing it from? And people just close their eyes and don't even think about that. And as Bill Still says, countries don't have to do that. They're sovereign. They can create their own monetary system. So unless there's a way to get out of this usury-based money, I don't see any kind of a benevolence, and it's just a form of enslavement.
Absolutely, that's what debt is, and whether it's feudalism or mortgage, having your house mortgaged, there have been, through history, there have been a lot of different expressions of financial tyranny. Yeah. And there have been times in history when people have been free of financial tyranny, and I'm especially thinking about the Old Testament. After Israel was settled in Canaan, they really were quite free, especially in the time of the judges. They were very free to possess their land, to benefit from their own labors, and to pass their land on to their children.
And what caused that period of time to end?
The king.
And why was, how did they get a king? How did that come about?
They asked for a king.
They wanted somebody to rule over them. Why? So they could be like the nations that were all around them, because they thought those guys have it better because they have a king. And the prophet Samuel said, "You do not realize what an evil thing you do when you ask for a king." God wants us all to be individually free and, what's the horrible A word for that?
What is?
Anarchy. The book of Judges is about a period of anarchy that God said through the prophet Samuel was better than being ruled by a king. So as much as Christians like to look back to David and Solomon as being, wonderful times, and all this great palace and all this wealth that was centralized, God actually said it was better when you didn't have that.
Well, I think it's worth, especially even in light of Mr. Van Dyne coming out into the light to some extent, being called the king of the world. I think it's probably a good moment to just examine why people want kings. I think one reason is, in a way, as a scapegoat. If we can, because we don't, by and large, I think a lot of people don't actually want to feel responsible for their lives. They don't want to be the ones called into account.
So then the perfect system would be where you have two parties, and about half of the people prefer one and half of the people prefer the other, and then whenever the abuses of government get too great, the people can say, throw the rascals out. A few people shift to the side to throw the rascals out and put some other rascals in, and then they can say, oh, we did a wonderful thing getting rid of those scoundrels, and pat themselves on the back, and then when the new guys are just as bad as the old guys, they can say, oh, gosh, our rulers got corrupt on us. We'll have to throw them out too. And you can keep that going forever.
Let's hope not. I really do see that, though, as a ruler is an anecdote, not an anecdote, an antidote for...
They're a joke, too.
For personal...
They're also a joke.
For personal responsibility. It's a way to avoid accepting responsibility for your life.
Well, that is what it comes down to, is if you're free, you have to accept more personal responsibility, and people want to escape the responsibility of being free, so they want to have rulers to point their finger at and say it's your fault. I agree with you.
And in the Old Testament, the kings, it started with Saul. I think to some extent they wanted a king because when they rode to war, they wanted somebody at the head of the line that would be the primary target. And in the old days, of course, it's not like that now because the old men who are directing the wars sit back in some dark, smoke-filled room. But at that time, the king rode out ahead of the army.
Yeah,
and
but
was
then
the
what
first attack.
What happened when Goliath came out to challenge the armies of Israel? They chose Saul because he was a head taller than anybody else.
Yeah.
And guess what? Saul did not go out and face Goliath.
No, he didn't.
He didn't.
You're right. That's absolutely the truth.
So I think we should throw him out and throw in a little pipsqueak called David, and then maybe he'll be a good guy. And gosh, I was reading about Jeroboam and Rehoboam now, and you know what? That all went by the wayside. But sadly, they didn't return to the time of the book of Judges, where they basically had no centralized government, and just God raised up local common law judges. It's hard to go back.
Yes, and that is what we are experiencing now. And I think a relevant question for all of us is: are we willing to assume responsibility for our lives?
Yeah, and also, are we willing are we really willing to try to the best of our ability to extricate ourselves from the world system? It's a very difficult thing to do, and that's one of the main points I was making on Fritz's page. Is we've got to have a way out that isn't just joining the Amish. It has to be something that people can do without having to pick up and move and join some group whose customs and manners are completely alien to them. And that's not no disrespect at all to the Amish. I'm in great admiration of who they are and what they've done. But it's not practical for people to join the Amish. It just doesn't work. And, hopefully there would be too many people that would want to leave the world system to join the Amish. We would love to help facilitate people getting out of the system, but you've got to have a few things. You've got to have land, to place that you can be rooted on, grounded in actual real production of crops, and not paying rent to somebody by being in the system, getting out of the usury system. You've got to have a monetary system, a way of exchange that is outside of the current financial system. How do you do that now? Wow, I think you're almost treated as a criminal, and in many cases you probably are if you attempt such things.
Well, of course, because then you wouldn't be paying taxes.
Yeah.
And you would be a criminal.
Well, yeah, well...
And I say that facetiously because...
yeah, it's all about what is real law. Is common law and do no harm your law, at the law of Christ, to love one another, or is obeying every jot and tittle of statutory law set up by a dominant global system that attracts sociopaths and psychopaths? Is that your law? Well, I hope Christians would say the former, not the latter.
I hope so too, and I hope that we can soon see that kind of lifestyle manifest in our lives.
Yeah. So, there's one more page that we want to look at, and this is the guy that I mentioned that's behind the Usury Free Jubilee, and I believe I've mentioned this blog in the past, Real Currencies by Anthony Migchels, and I've been looking into people that claim to have figured out how to solve the monetary system. There's all kinds of groups. There's the there's Stephen Zarlinga's Institute for Monetary Reform, an American group, American Monetary Institute, I think it's called. There is, in Europe, there is a group called, oh gosh, I can't remember the name right now. But they all miss the core. But Anthony gets the core, and it's all about interest. It doesn't matter what you have backing the money. Okay, I don't want to forget to mention Bill Still, too. Bill Still is absolutely great, and he gets it probably more than anyone except, I think, Anthony and the people that are allied with him. The core issue is usury. And even if you charge as a banking institution, a lender, and even if you have asset-backed currencies and you charge interest on the money that you lend out, you will end up with the biggest piece of the pie, simply because you have a set deal, a done deal, like we talked about earlier, and that this guy has proven in this book. So you don't have all of the costs that go along with setting up a business. You just have your money lending racket going, and basically it has to. And the Bible says, "Don't lend money at interest." That's usury, and Anthony gets it. That's what his whole focus is, and that's what we need to get to as a people on this planet in order to have true prosperity for all mankind. We need to go to interest-free money.
Did I hear at one time that the stock market was contrived because Christians didn't want to lend money, but they wanted to be able to benefit didn't want to charge interest, but they wanted to be able to benefit when they loaned money. If all things being equal, if there was justice and parity in the stock market, that would be a way to lend money and without charging interest, and share the risk and share the benefits. And is that, what am I remembering?
Well, I do remember that you put in the book on investing that we wrote that the Christians, at one point after the Reformations, Christians wouldn't do lending because of the scripture prohibitions against it, and then but the Jews would, so that's how they got control of a lot of monetary institutions. So that's a related idea. But, and then of course later on it turned out that the Christians said, oh, well, usury doesn't mean any interest, it just means excessive interest, and they rationalized the whole thing. But the way that I'm looking at it now, I'm basically rejecting the idea that of the time value of money as if you're losing something by lending it out at non-interest. Without losing it out if you don't charge interest. Even though you're demanding that somebody repay you in, some kind of a schedule, nothing wrong with that. But if you lend it out at interest, you are saying that what you could do with it is more valuable than what somebody else could do with it. Because ultimately, what is beyond your personal needs, you want to benefit humanity, right? So if you're a benevolent person, if you lend it out without interest to somebody, you're saying, I value what you can do with this money more than what I can do because my needs are already met and I'm not thinking as expansively as you are. And it's not about multiplying your money, it's about making the world a better place. Yeah, you might be able to cause your money to make more money faster than somebody else could use your money to make more money, but that's not the be-all end-all. The goal is not to populate the world with money, the goal is to populate the world with good works. So you want to give it to somebody who has the ability to do good works in ways that you can't, because we all complement one another, right? We don't all have the same gifts and talents, and you want to multiply others' talents by lending freely. That's how I'm looking at it.
Sure, and that's great, but that did trigger the thought of Matthew 25 and Luke 19. The servant that was entrusted with the funds when the master left, and the servant was expected to increase the funds. That was the goal.
Yeah. Well, I guess I'm saying that maybe there's an even bigger picture possible than that. That the funds could be increased and the person from whom they're lent could say that I don't have need of those funds. You're doing such a good job in multiplying them that why don't you keep on doing that? And ultimately, I think that's what Christ said when he said, you've done a good job. You let me give you this many cities.
Yeah.
So ultimately, it's about multiplying blessing and not about the return on your investment.
And I love what how the Message Bible puts that, come and be my partner.
Yeah. Right. So, yeah, don't think small-minded, think big, and don't think what you can get. Think what you're able to give God in the world, in His church, in the kingdom of God. Increase that, not your own private stash, and just, yeah. I mean, we need more people that know it's more blessed to give than to receive.
Sure. And then God says, hey, come and be my partner.
Yeah.
That's what I want.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for tuning in for this week's Pearls of Liberty, and we hope that you're having a great weekend.
And as always, we remind you to See the world the way that it really is. Yes, there really is an Illuminati. See yourself in it. Walk your walk. You are the one you've been waiting for.